Okay, chapter 13, the costs of production. And the most important thing in this chapter to understand, I need all the parts of the chapter to understand it, but the most important thing in this chapter is table 2. Okay, table 2. Right here. Table 2. Okay. Table 2 basically breaks down the different measures of cost. Now, why should we care about cost? Well, if you look at industries, everybody talks about companies and profit. Everybody wants profit, but they can't control it. So much depends on the market. They can't, the market determines the prices, which affects their revenues. If anything's going on, like say the COVID 2020 outbreak, COVID-19 2020 outbreak, that's hurt demand. Companies can't help that. The one thing they can control is their costs. That's why a lot of companies during this, we're filming this spring 2020, when halfway through the semester we went everything online. People didn't see that coming. So the only thing they control at this point is their costs. So when I ask you moving forward, okay, what should businesses be obsessed with? You need to tell me cost. Okay. Yeah, they want profits, but successful businesses that make more profit are obsessed with costs. And we're talking in this chapter about all the different costs. So, table, let me turn this a little. It's a lot on my board here. Work with me. Table 2 in this chapter, I'm going to move out of the way and go through it, is so stinking important. It really is. I always dread it when I'm live lecturing this thing. I have to write all this thing out because, look at it. It's a very involved table, but it is incredibly educational if you work your way through it with the context of the chapter at your back. Now, let's see if we can do this. So you may not be able to read all of that, but it says chapter 12, table 2 at the very bottom. That's all you're missing there. Okay. Adjusting. What we're looking at here is in terms of production. Let's just go column by column. Okay. This first column, and you can follow along in your reading, open another window over beside this with your reading in it, is output. It's the quantity of output, or Y. Output many times is expressed as Y. And we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Next column over is we have total cost. Now, total cost is the summation. So its total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. And those are our next two columns beyond total cost. Okay. So as you can see, total cost goes up over time. Fixed cost, well, judging by the word, it's fixed. In this example, it's $3. Every time we make a unit of output, even if we don't make a unit of output, it's $3. Okay, so it stays at $3. Now, these are little numbers to keep it simple in the math. This could be rent. Okay, whether your factory is open or not, you're having to pay rent on it or pay the property taxes or whatever. Now, make sure I'm catching the top of that. Perfect. Variable cost, well, it varies. It varies depending on whether you're producing. So if you're not producing, you don't have any variable costs. So if you're a cupcake factory and you're not going to be producing, you don't buy flour, you don't buy sugar, you don't buy milk. So your variable cost is 0. But as you produce more, as we move from 0 units to 1 unit, to 1 to 2, all the way down here to 10 units, you will see the variable cost increases over time because the more you produce, the more variable cost you have. Now, then we move into the second half, what I like to call the money half of the table here. We have average fixed cost, which of course is fixed cost divided by your quantity of output, so Q, your quantities. You could say QY, Q of Y, is your fixed cost divided by your quantity produced. So in this first example, in the first line rather, the quantity of output is 0. So you actually don't take this. We're not interested in this number. When we start producing, we'll divide in. Okay, your average variable cost is your variable cost from over here divided by quantity. Okay, we want to know these averages over time because we're going to be able to graph it later on in the chapter and be able to tell a whole lot from that graph. Okay, average total cost is just your total cost divided by Q. All right, and I need you to be able to do some reading because it breaks down total cost, fixed cost, variable cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost. Now, while we can calculate average fixed cost is fixed cost over Q, average variable cost is variable cost over Q, quantity of Y, average total cost is total cost divided by Q. All you have to remember is if you get two of these things, you can figure it out because average fixed cost plus average variable cost is average total cost. So if you have two of them, you can figure it out. So how you're going to see this on the homework and the exam is there's going to be a blank somewhere in this table. And you just have to be keen enough on the calculation to know how to fill in that blank. Now, the most important cost in this entire chapter is marginal cost, which is your last category over here on the right. Marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity, so the change in output. Now, why might that be important? So, marginal cost is, marginal, first of all, means the cost from your next unit. So, if you produce one more unit of output, what does it cost me? Well, you need to know that because in the next 4 chapters after this, those are the money chapters, so how the course wraps up is a 4-chapter run after this cost chapter, where you're going to calculate marginal benefits, so you're gonna have marginal cost, not benefits, marginal revenues. My apologies. Depending on whether you are in a competitive market, whether you're in an oligopoly, which is a market with a few firms, whether you're monopolistically competitive, or if you're a monopoly, there's 4 different ways to calculate marginal revenue. Now, your marginal revenue is what you're bringing in every unit you produce. Your marginal cost is what's going out, what you're paying out for every unit you produce. So naturally, at the very beginning, you're not making any money. But once you get up and started, all right, as a firm, you need to know when you need to start slowing down in your production, when you need to not produce more. And what tells you that is when your marginal cost equals your marginal revenue. Okay, so if you trust me, in the next 4 weeks, you guys are going to become pros at this. So trust me for now. You're going to have to find marginal cost every time. You're going to have to find marginal revenue every time as well, but depending on the different circumstances with your monopoly, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, or perfect competition type of market, excuse me, you're going to have to find marginal revenue. Well, the underlying thing there is then you're going to compare it to marginal cost. So what you learn in this chapter about how to derive marginal cost will affect how well you do in the next 4 chapters. So if nothing else, for the good of your grade, learn marginal cost, okay? But to learn marginal cost, you got to learn this whole table. So that's why table 2 is so important, why I'm spending time on it. So how do we calculate marginal cost? Well, up here it says total cost, all right, all the way to the right over here. It says total cost, change in total, not total cost, change. You see that delta, the triangle? That's a Greek letter for delta that's in economics widely used as change. So change in total cost divided by the change in quantity, okay? Now, how do we calculate that? Well, everything else is in neat rows and columns, sort of. I try to draw it as best I can. I'm not a computer. Well, your change in quantity is where you go from 0 to 1, and 1 to 2, and 2 to 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's your change in quantity. So what you're looking at is your change here. Now, your change in total cost is going from 0 to 1. Your total cost went from 3 to 330. Now, why did it go from 3 to 330? Okay, well, first of all, if you're not producing and you have a cost, that's not variable cost, because variable cost only happens when you produce. So if you're not producing and you have a cost, it must be a fixed cost. So there's a little True, false, a little fill in the blanks, something for the exam and the homework. Okay? Your fixed cost is well fixed, so it's always 3. All right? But your variable cost varies as you produce more. All right? You put those two things together, you've got total cost. Now, when you look at your total cost unit by unit, that means, hey, my next unit, there's that keyword next, that means marginal. My next unit, what does it cost me? My marginal cost. Okay? So I can tell you right now, Nabisco knows right down to the individual package of Oreos how many Oreos they should be producing. Why? They know their marginal cost. File it away. I'm telling you, it's very, very important. So how do we do this in this table? How do we make it easier on ourselves? We want to get an A in your course, Kiesler. How do we do this? Well, if you notice, I've drawn this blue line, okay, in the middle of all this black font, if you will, this black writing. The reason why I've done that is because the change in quantity here is from 0 to 1. Okay, so marginal cost is always going to fall in between the lines, okay, in between all these numbers. So if you look at 0 all the way across and you look at 1 all the way across, that blue line goes in between. The marginal cost is simply the change in total cost when I move from Q1 or Q of 0 to a Q of 1. All right, my output, my quantity, there's my Q. Okay. So if I say output, if I say quantity, if I say Y, I mean output, I mean quantity, I mean what you're producing. 0 cupcakes to 1 cupcake, 1 cupcake to 2, so on and so forth. Because we're looking at this marginally step by step means next. Okay? So I drew this line all the way across because that marginal cost comes in between the two lines. Okay? So in going from 0 to 1 units, okay, I went from a total cost of $3 to $3.30. So look whatever marginal cost is over here. Cost went up by 30 cents. So your marginal cost from going from 0 to 1, your total cost went from $3 to $3.30. The difference is 30 cents. That's marginal cost. Seems very simple, but it is incredibly elegant. When you get down to it, you're like, okay, well, who cares? Well, what if you got down here and you say you got to $1.50 in marginal cost, but that was your marginal revenue, and the next time you produced another Oreo, your marginal revenue went to $1.60, but your marginal cost went to $1.70. You just lost money. Okay, so you don't want to produce that additional unit of output. All right. You want to produce right up until the point that you get all the profit that you possibly can without the cost overtaking your revenues. Now, why does that matter? Well, it takes money to produce output, all right? And it takes labor. And you take that labor and you pay them your money. Now, if you hire too many people, that's on you, okay? You've got to know where to draw the line in the sand and hire people. Sometimes economic conditions change and you have to lay people off. But if you're having to lay people off because you're incompetent because you didn't pay attention to microeconomics, that's on you, homie. You should really feel bad at night. You just laid a bunch of people off because you can't do basic math. Really comes down to that. Sorry, I don't mean to be harsh, man, but it's a savage world out there. All right. Now, let's go on and do this. So if we move from 1 unit of production to 2 units of production, we move from $3.30 to $3.80 in terms of total cost. Guess what? Marginal cost goes to 50 cents. 2 to 3, okay? $3.80 to $4.50. Marginal cost 70 cents. 3 to 4, so on and so forth, 90 cents. Okay? Let's jump down here to 7 to 8. Okay? If we go from 7 units to 8 units, we just went from $9.30 to $11. That's a difference of $1.70. Okay? Now let's just say I'm gonna let you peek ahead a little bit here. Okay? Let's just say in the coming chapters you find out that your marginal cost, okay, is $1.50, and your marginal revenue, this is where they equal, is $1.50. Up here, let's say your marginal revenue is $1.25. Down here, let's say your marginal revenue is 160. Well, your marginal revenue is still going up. You should keep producing. If your marginal revenue is $1.60, your marginal cost is 70 cents, you just lost 10 cents. Up here, okay, you know what, I'm sorry, it should be about $1.40. We'll derive this. You just made 10 cents. Down here, you're losing 10 cents. Okay, so if this is $1.40 and marginal revenue is $1.50, it's going up 10 cents every time. As soon as you decide to go from 7 to 8 units of production, you just lost yourself money. Okay, you were making money right up until this point. You want to make money, as much money as you possibly can, right up until the point you can't. Okay, but then if you start losing money, you got to stop. All right, and marginal revenue, when we graph it in the next 4 chapters after this one, you're gonna be like, oh man. So just trust me on something here, okay? You absolutely want to operate where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. You're going to be so sick of hearing that moving forward. All right, here's the beautiful thing. In this chapter, you're learning about cost, but in the 4 chapters after that, you can go completely brain dead on me and get points on the final exam that we're going to take. Don't worry, that last exam is your final exam. No more paper, okay? Your marginal cost equals your marginal revenue, okay? If you can remember nothing else, remember this. All right, marginal cost equals marginal revenue, because that is this. As a situation where, hey, I'm making money. Oh, wait, I'm even. Next thing you do after you're even with your revenues and your costs, because your costs are always going up. Look at that variable cost, okay? Look at this variable cost up here. It's always skyrocketing as you produce more. So it's good reasoning to say eventually that's going to overtake your revenues. Okay, your revenues tend to decline, your costs tend to escalate. All right, you have to keep in mind that at some point you got to stop hiring people, stop buying eggs, stop buying milk, flour to make cupcakes. Okay, at some point you got to know where that is, and this table tells you exactly what to produce. So for example, if our marginal cost equaled our marginal revenue going from 6 to 7, we should produce 7 and not anymore. When we go from 7 to 8, we just lost money. That is the point of marginal cost. So now you're looking back and you're like, well, who cares about average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average total cost? I can just use this left-hand side of the table to explain things, all right? All the way over to marginal cost. Well, why do I need the things in between? Well, we're going to come back in the next video, and you're going to take these numbers, or at least I'm going to take these numbers, and we're going to look at some graphs, and it's going to start to paint the picture as to why you need average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average total cost, all right? It's a good determinant of a lot of things, but I'm going to make you wait until the next video on that. All right, get into table 2. It will help you on the homework. Get into the reading. It's section 13-3. So if you're going in there from Mind Tap 13-3, the various measurements of cost, all the costs are in that same table. Now let me go ahead and give you a little pro tip as well. All right, life hack here. If you turn to the very back of the chapter, section 13-5, I'm telling you to skip around the reading. You need every bit of you can get. You see this table right here? It says table 3. It's a cost summary. All right, it's every cost in this chapter, which are a lot, along with every equation you need to get there. So it's a good little life hack if you're taking the exam on the fly. All right, so keep that in mind. I'll be right back with a few graphs. There's a couple graphs I want to go over, and it's going to really paint the more complete picture if you're a company producing, I don't care if it's BMWs or tires or cupcakes, I don't care. Every one of them needs it, so we'll spend some time on those graphs as well. All right, hang in there, and I'll see you again soon in the next video.